Welcome to Smart Parents, Successful Students, the podcast that helps parents like you guide your children toward academic confidence and success. I'm your host, Helen Panos, and I'm here to share expert tips, proven strategies, and inspiring stories that make the journey to school success a little smoother for both you and your student. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Smart Parents, Successful Students podcast. I'm your host, Helen Panos, and I have another guest for you this week, and her name is Coach Krystal Dement. Is it right, Dement?
Yes, ma'am.
Yay, I got it right this time. All right.
I still like the way you're pronouncing it before, Demente. I actually really liked that.
French.
Yeah, so French of you. How French?
Makes me want to go to France now. A friend of mine just went and came back. That's funny. Well, today we've got some special things to talk to you guys about. Ooh, you're going to love it. And it's all about the personality secret to productive executive functioning. So we're going to be doing a couple of executive functioning videos and audios for you guys. And you can catch Krystal. Actually, we've done several in the last season, in season 13. So you can find those on my website and or my YouTube channel, and or Spotify. They're in different places. So you can go find the others we talked about, which were really great as well. But today we're going to talk about personality and productive executive functioning. So Krystal, first of all, please tell everybody who you are and your background.
Okay, so I am an executive function coach. I have been coaching since about 2021, officially. However, before that, I worked in business management and HR, where I worked with people and employees on their skills, and executive functioning was one of them. I kind of took a side quest with people and experienced, their angles of executive dysfunction and how I could help them. And through my own ADHD, have developed some pretty good ways to go about helping people with it. And so I did that. I worked in business management and HR for about 15 years. So and here I am now working with kids and adults.
Oh, cool. And what brought you to this journey to do coaching, actually? Can you tell our audience about that?
Sure. It's a very personal journey. When I was a kid, I knew I had ADHD. However, I didn't really know how it affected me until I graduated high school and I fell flat on my face. And so I had to learn how to be a human being again. Once I moved out and the structure was removed, out from underneath me. However, I have, a really good grit and determination, thank goodness. And I was able to develop those skills for myself, at least to get by. However, it did take a lot of trial and error, where I had lost jobs. I had, had very rough times through relationships. And so I, out of necessity, had to come up with these skills for myself. But doing it for other people is a lot easier, actually. And it's very fulfilling that I can provide something that people can't do for themselves, and that, keeping them from having to go through some of the pain that I went through.
Wow, that's well said. A lot of times we can't do things ourselves because you're too into it, in the situation, right? I kind of think about my own divorce. I mean, I was an educator and I could probably see what the problems were, but I had to reach out to somebody outside of our marriage to help. And you're just like, you're spinning. It's almost like your head's spinning. You can't really think it out. You have to be coached through it.
It's kind of like standing too close to a mirror. You can't see what's going on unless you take a step back. And it's very difficult to take a step back when you're in it.
Yes, great analogy. So how does understanding someone's unique personality enhance executive functioning strategies and lead to greater productivity?
So as I mentioned, I worked in HR, and this is where I started learning a lot about personality. Afterwards, I did go to school for psychology, and I learned a whole lot more. But I see everything through the Myers-Briggs lens. And so incorporating personality is crucial for executive function strategies because they're not one size fits all. So, for example, a highly conscious person might thrive with detailed to-do lists, while someone more spontaneous might benefit more from flexible frameworks or time blocking that allows for that variety that they need. So there's a cruel paradox with ADHD where we need structure and stability at the same time. And so to be able to do that, we have to look at how much of that we really do need. Because it's some people, if you try to overstructure, they become very stressed. And then the stress makes executive function worse because it shuts down the prefrontal cortex, right?
Right. Yeah.
So understanding these inherent tendencies that we have allows us to tailor these tools and systems that feel natural and sustainable, rather than forcing a square peg into a round hole, right? This makes strategies more effective and in turn boosts productivity because people are working with their natural inclinations and not against them.
That's an interesting idea because, I've worked with a fourth grader who's very highly intelligent and probably working more like a sixth grader. I feel like I'm dealing with a sixth grader. And I've been working with him for 4 years since he was in kindergarten. And when it comes to writing, he just does not like writing. But some of that is his ADHD and executive functioning issues and autism. So I believe he does know the content. I keep saying that to his mother. She can either have me keep coming in here and paying me, or I think what he needs now is some executive functioning skills. Because when I try some of the ones I just kind of know as a teacher, which is, let's use a timer to get you going. He freaks out over the time. I would love for you to do a Myers-Briggs personality on him because I know speaking of putting a peg inside of a square, a round peg into a square, that would be him because that's not going to work. And I know you have a toolbox where, like, maybe say something that you think to our audience that would work maybe instead. I know you don't know his personality, but what is something else that could be done possibly?
Well, let's say that his personality type is more of a perceiver type, which is the type that's spontaneous. Okay. It's the type that likes to leave their options open. They like to have more time to think around things. They like to see the possibilities in things. And so when you have a brain like that, you want to give yourself time to think around subjects. While a very efficient person, should I say, could go right to the result that we would all want to see, this other type of person takes a more roundabout way to get there. It takes them a little bit longer. And it's not that it's a bad thing that they're taking longer. It's that they're exploring other avenues of thought, and they actually can come up with more creative ideas around something given the time. And so that type of person needs to work within time blocks rather than a system of, of every 15 minutes. Yeah. Do it now. They need to have, okay, well, you have from this time to this time each day, right? Because you're talking about autism. We want to make sure that there is a schedule there, right? So you get the consistency, but then you also get the novelty of freedom within that time. So in between this time and this time, you will be working on your creative, with your creative mind, right? And you'll be thinking about the different ways that you can do this from this time to this time. Also giving that person breaks within, is very important. Making sure that they're set up with, with like snacks and a drink and things like that. Things to keep them to,
that's him.
In it.
Yep. He always gives his snacks and drinks while I'm there at the very beginning. Yeah.
Right.
And he is very creative, actually, because he can use music and put it together and produce it. That's pretty much what he wants to do. So
That's
he's
wonderful.
he's an interesting child. He
Uh-huh.
really is, because you don't see this kind of combination in children typically.
Right. And so if you don't stand back and give room for creativity in that instance, then there's going to be, you're not going to see that creativity because you didn't wait for it long enough.
Here's another example of that, if I may jump in. So he wouldn't start an essay. And so I said, oh, let's ask ChatGPT to do it for you. And I said, I was waiting for him to steal one of those three, right? But he didn't. It actually encouraged him. I don't know if it was a competitive thing or something with the brain. It actually made him, maybe it was his creativity, go and immediately write how he was going to start the essay. And I had been struggling with him for 20 minutes or so to get him to start.
Right. He's like, no, I don't need that. I can do it.
Right.
And suddenly he can, and that works on, there's the 4 C's of motivation, and one of them is compete, and so we want to compete with either ourselves or with somebody else or AI, and so he's like, no, I can do it myself. And then you get a little bit of productivity out of that. And so there's a lot of ways to work around that with personality. And there are competitive types of personalities too.
Yeah.
That tend to be more competitive. And so we look at that type and we say, okay, well, how can we make this a competitive situation? You can compete with time. You can compete with yourself. You can compete with others, and of course, in a nice way. But it's all ways to stimulate the brain for motivation and productivity.
Yeah. I remember my first corporate job. I had a female that was very competitive with me. I remember that. So people probably will run into that personality at some point. So how does understanding one's own personality contribute to building authentic confidence, especially in the context of productivity?
So true confidence comes from self-awareness, right? When you understand yourself and your personality, you recognize your natural strengths and also where you might face inherent challenges. So this isn't about judgment. It's about clarity. If you know you're naturally more introverted, for instance, you can confidently plan your work to include quiet focus time without feeling like you should be constantly collaborating. We see this a lot in school situations, how, the world is kind of set up for the extrovert. However, statistics show that introverts are actually more intelligent because they introvert their ideas and they think them through. And so if you're forcing that person to be extroverted and to do all of, make their decisions right now, and, you're going to snuff out that creativity and that productivity, because they need time to step back and really think things through. So knowing yourself and knowing that that's somebody that needs, for instance, 2 to 48 hours to step back and think about something, then you can give them time to do that. You're going to want to schedule that time that way, right? So acknowledging that certain tasks might be harder for you due to personality traits allows you to develop specific coping strategies or ask for help without feeling inadequate. Okay. This acceptance and strategic adaptation, right, build genuine confidence because you're operating from a place of self-understanding and intentionally rather than constantly striving for an unrealistic ideal, right? So we're trying to understand ourselves to better for productivity. Just to put it just clearly, it's right. You're going to understand how you work, and you're going to be more confident in using those methods.
I think this becomes important in relationships and marriages. And it's great that we know more about all this now, because we didn't back in the day when I got married the first time, let's say. So I think, you definitely have to be aware of not only your own personality that you're bringing into a relationship, then view the other person's too, because you may get along fine and the marriage will be great or the relationship will be great, but you still we're going to hit some bumps in the road, right? And you got to know how to deal with it instead of reacting emotionally, because we're just talking about that before this show. And and I think it comes down to what we see a lot too, Krystal, which is what we were also talking about before the show, is type A personality females talking to their sons that are juniors and seniors, and how we're starting to see a lot of clashing going on there. Do you want to bring up anything quickly about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I do. Most of the people that we see in this situation are the type A parent with the type B student. And it can happen two different ways. The person can naturally be inclined to being type B, the child can, or both of the parents are so type A that it turns the child off to being type A. And I've actually seen that multiple times, and they'll come back, their personality, assessments will come back and it'll say, that they're, for instance, they're a J when they're actually a P, but it's because they're turned off by the idea of authoritarian parenting.
Wow.
An authoritative parenting, and it actually, it snuffs their personal growth because they're unable to be who they need to be. And so understanding that kind of default setting that we have can help that not only the parent understand that, hey, it doesn't have to look exactly like the way that you do everything. It doesn't have to look that way. It can look different than that and still be good. But also the parent or the child understanding the parent saying, okay, I understand where they're coming from and why they're feeling this way and why this stresses them out for me to say, do things at the last minute or kind of fly by the seat of my pants, because that's, not something that either of my parents are used to. And so it's very important to understand that. And now I want to say it's also important to use, personality assessments and information that comes from that as more of a guideline rather than finite knowledge, because we are human. This is, we have different things that influence us to do different, to appear certain ways. But if you can try to figure out that default setting, like what we, are going to grow into, then we can, best find out what it is we want to do with our lives. And, and it helps the parent understand, like, hey, this person is not going to do what you did with your life. And statistically, this is why. Because people that are like this end up doing this, and they feel they're happiest in these areas, and they actually make more money because they're happier here. And so it opens up like a whole new way of thinking, and helps with understanding. You see less arguing, and more acceptance.
And that's why you start seeing kids nowadays, teens, wanting to take, I think, a gap year. And some parents are, fighting them over that. But I think more and more parents are starting to see that it's better not to fight them over that, because it probably has something to do with personality in the long run. Yeah, it's I'm sure that's a whole other subject we could talk about, is the gap year and why that's happening more.
And I can touch on it just real quick, with a gap year, some people just need a little longer to mature to the point where they're ready to go to college. They need to experience a regular job for a minute. They need to take a breath. They need to come up for air. Sometimes by the time that they graduate, if you have executive dysfunction or ADHD, you're so exhausted by the time you graduate. Sometimes you got to take a second to take a breath.
That's true.
And being forced into going to school immediately, it's like you just don't have a second to breathe and really think about. And so what it does is people end up going to school for what they're, not supposed to be going to school for. They go to school for what people, and with
other people told them to do.
Good intentions. People have good intentions, and they're like, hey, go and do this with your life. This is what you should be doing. This would be great for you. But they don't have a second to actually figure that out for themselves.
And that's why I think our career planning people and it's interesting, everything we've touched upon today, I've got others in this season 14, that I've already interviewed that go along with everything we're saying here. Andy Goldstrom, perfect, because he's talking about parenting and the journey. And then Lori Genevish is talking about college planning. So, I mean, this all ties into, you got to have executive functioning skills and how important that is to be successful in life.
Right. You have to be able
going to college, and not only high school, going into college, going into finding a job, finding a mate, finding a relationship, friending other people who are different than you, as friendships. Yep. I think, there's a lot of awareness now of this topic. So more and more people are finding out about it. So it's great.
Yeah.
That's
we have
awesome.
to slow down. We got to slow down and think about it for a second,
Mm-hmm.
and really, and take it in and at least listen to it, for a second to see if this is right for us. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's where a lot of us made mistakes in the past, is we dove quickly into college,
Mm-hmm.
and by the we graduated college we graduated college and then didn't want to do that thing.
Right.
And then that's awful.
And I did business for 5 years. I didn't mind doing it, but I think things happen then. And I think in a job that then you're like, do I really want to do this? And then I went into teaching for the 25 years. So, yeah, sometimes you're pushed into it. And then other times you're like, well, later on, you're like, maybe that's not really for me after all. Because it did come down to, I think, personality, actually, because I did take a personality test because I was in HR. So I think it was interesting. It's a long story. I'll have to talk about it one day. But thank you for coming on the show, Krystal. And I know you have another episode. So folks, contact me if you'd like to have a free consultation with Krystal to talk about this executive functioning and the skills, or what you're seeing with your child and your teen. We do 6th through 12th graders, and we do adults. So definitely reach out. My information's on there, and it will also be on the show notes. So everybody, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and catch our other episode on executive functioning as well. Bye for now. Thanks for tuning in to Smart Parents Successful Students podcast. If you found today's episode insightful, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out our YouTube channel for even more tips to help your student thrive. Until next time, keep guiding your children towards success.